All right, so in this lesson, we are talking about sample variation and sample standard deviation of a population. So I'm going to pretend that we're going to be finding the average or the standard deviation and variance of the number of years teaching at Maryville High School. So these numbers, the data is going to represent the number of years spent teaching at MHS. So we're going to choose, even though there are about 175 teachers, we are going to only choose 5 at random and ask them, how many years have you been teaching at Maryville High School? So I'm going to choose 5 at random, and let's say the first person says they have 5 years experience, then, 1 year of experience, 5 years experience, 3, 10, and 23. So those are my 5 pieces of data that I'm going to use for my sample variance and my sample standard deviation. So the only difference is that, in finding variance and standard deviation of a sample population is that you divide by n minus 1 instead of n. So that is really the only difference. And also knowing that it's a sample of a larger population rather than the entire population. So if you are asked to find, if you know exactly how many people are in this population, like we did in the last couple videos, the last couple lessons, then you would just divide by n. But if you are finding statistics for a larger set of data and you're only choosing a smaller set of data at random, then for some reason, mathematically and statistically, the number comes out better when you divide by n minus, or more accurate when you divide by n minus 1 rather than by n. All right, so either way, the first thing you have to do is find your mean. So to find the mean, we have to add up our numbers. So if I take the sum, now here you do divide by the number of numbers. For mean, you don't change that. So if we add up our numbers, we get 42 divided by our number of numbers, which is 5, we get 8.4. So this time we're going to have a decimal. So the numbers are going to be a little bit more, have more decimals than we have in the past. The next thing we want to do is make our table, because we want to find our variance by taking the data minus the average and then squaring that. So I'm going to list my data vertically: 1, 3, 5, 10, and 23. Then I'm going to subtract my average, or mu, which is 8.4. And then I'm going to, after I subtract those numbers, I'm going to square them. And of course, I would probably use a calculator, and I've already done these calculations. So when I subtract the 1 minus 1.4, I get negative 7.4, and when I square it, I get 54.76. When you take the 3 minus the 8.4, I get negative 5.4, and when I square it, I get 29.16. When you take 5 minus 8.4, you get negative 3.4. Squared is 11.56. When you take 10 minus 8.4, you get 1.6. You square that, which gives you 2.56. The 23 minus the 8.4 is 14.6. Squared is 213.16. So just like before, we're going to find the sum of the squared differences. So the sum of the squared differences then is 311.2. So that actually ended up being a little bit nicer number. But this is where we have the big difference. Instead of dividing by 5, we divide by 4. So this is n minus 1, or 5 minus 1. So if you were finding the variance or the standard deviation of a population and not a sample population, you would divide by 5 here. But since it is a sample of a larger population, we divide by n minus 1, or 4. So that, again, that's the only difference really in this whole process. So after I divide by 4, I get 77.8. So this would be considered my sample variance. And then to find my sample standard deviation, you would just take the square root of that 77.8, which is approximately 8.8. Right, so that's our lesson on sample variance and sample standard deviation. And again, the only difference was what you were dividing by here. You're dividing by n minus 1 rather than n.